Hello and welcome to Teacher Needs a Drink podcast. I am Elvis, your host. I'm here to welcome you to a Not Safe for Work podcast. We are teachers at the end of the week and really the end of our ropes, and we'd like to be able to talk honestly and openly about education without having to worry about losing our jobs. So we'll be using pseudonyms throughout the podcast. This is a very special episode. It's our 200th episode, and so we're going to talk about some things that are very special to us. But the thing that's really special to me are some people who've been around since the beginning, and those are a lot of our patrons on Patreon. That's right, for as little as $5 a month, you can listen and get all kinds of extra things. We have a special bonus episode that's about to release. It's this, plus an extra 40 minutes of content that's on there. It's exclusively for the patrons. So if you're interested and like this episode and want to hear more, go to our Patreon, sign up. You can even do it through Spotify now. And if you sign up, you get your name read out, like these beautiful people. A big thank you to William P., Justin M., Jessica C., Inga, Kaylee, Terry J., Tracy B., Miss Wonderstats, Quentin P., Ekebex, Mistress Mischief, Natasha S., Miss Anthropy, Princess Buttercup, Dragon Lady, Helena C., Aaron B., Stephanie S., Texas Teacher Kristen, James Nally J., Samantha D., Lisa C., Rachel, Jan Genie, Exhausted Band Director, Kimberly K., Jessica A., Swiffle Ev Owners, Amanda F., Ariana L., Physics Runner, Steph, Michael M., Aldrich T., La Scorpionita, Britt M., Teresa H., Biker Teach, Christina B., Jason F., Abby B., Sarah B., Regina N., Josie S., Sam B., Mary E., Kristen W., Vanessa J., Mary C., RJR, Johanna H., Irma A., Nimi, and Sarah N. Big thank you to all of them. I'd also like to do a big shout out to our sponsor at Lud Lamb Dramatics. If you are a theater teacher or no one in your building, go to ludlambdramatics.com. They have their link in the contents, and it is just the best thing ever. Also, we talk about all kinds of things in this podcast. You're gonna love it. I promise. You are gonna love it because we love everybody. And so we talk about protecting everybody. So I hope you enjoy this 200th episode. If you listen to it and like it and want to hear a lot more, like half an hour more, go sign up at the Patreon. All right, friends, please enjoy our 200th episode. Woohoo! All right, guys, let's harmonize the balls. Are you ready? In the moment. Balls. Very good. Welcome to Teacher Needs a Drink podcast. This is our 200th episode. Cheers! Clinkety clink clink clink.
Yes!
I am Elvis, your host, and today I am joined by Miss Bunny O'Hare, who just took a drink. I should have given you a heads up on that one.
Hey Elvis, hey folks.
And across from me I have Mr. Count Chocolate.
200th episode? Hey, the chocolatey one is so excited.
I'm excited. This is great. And then coming back, we had her on almost a year ago. We have Miss Librarian Evie Carnahan. Carnahan?
That's it, yeah.
Oh, I got it right.
Carnahan. Hello, happy 200th anniversary or episode. This is my second.
All right. Well, friends,
for both of us.
I'm really excited you guys are here. I'm surprised we made it this far, especially after this last year. I was like, oh man, I'm done with this. But hey, here we are, and I'm excited about it. And the next thing I wanted to say is for the 200th, I was struggling on what to do. I was like, I can do a clip show. We can get all the hosts and have a big party. What should we do to recognize this? And I really wasn't feeling inspired by any of it. I was like, oh, there's some topics we could talk about that really mean a lot to me. And if I was going to value it and where it is on my status of importance, I'd say it's 200th episode worthy. And so today our focus is all about LGBTQ rights for students. And how important I feel that is. And I feel this is the greatest time to use this and use this platform because I think it's really fucking important. So we're going to talk about it and talk about why. We're going to go in depth, and our friends will share things as they feel comfortable sharing, and we're going to go through. So I hope you guys love it. And I'm going to have to edit it for a second because I'm babbling. But let's go ahead. And we're going to go ahead and start with an article. And this article is 2 librarians were fired after the board mistook an autism symbol for a pride display. Okay. The librarians are suing.
Oh my God.
Here we go.
Sue them hard.
Wonder how that'll go for them, though, actually.
We'll find out. two former librarians of Sterling Free Public Library in Sterling, Kansas, have filed a lawsuit claiming they were fired over a June library display featuring a rainbow symbol that was mistaken for a Pride Month display. The library's board fired library director Carrie Wheeler and assistant librarian Brandy Lancaster on July 5th after library employee Ruth Splitter complained to the board about the display. Lancaster created the display as part of a national summer reading program with the theme of All Together Now. The display featured a rainbow infinity symbol, a logo often used by neurodivergent autism right advocates, along with a heart and the words, "We all think differently." The display also featured a rainbow image of a child in a wheelchair and a quote from Black writer Maya Angelou that said, "In diversity, there is beauty and strength." The display also included the books Emma and Mommy Talk to God, The Color Purple, Uncle Tom's Cabin, Separate is Never Equal, Wonder, and To Kill a Mockingbird. Of the books, only The Color Purple contains anything relating to LGBTQ content. Hey, Mr. Cat. On June 22nd, Splitter, a temporary summer library employee, complained about the display to Lancaster, saying she found the gay pride symbol offensive and went into an anti-LGBT diatribe, even though Lancaster explained that the infinity symbol represented neurodiversity and autism and not LGBTQ.
She probably hates that too.
Splitter then complained about the display to Michelle Miller, vice chair of the library board. Miller reportedly told Lancaster that she could get her fellow board members to have Lancaster take down the display. "I am totally fine with diversity of skin color display, just not represented with rainbow colors," Miller texted Wheeler, the director, according to the lawsuit. "I do not want any kind of rainbow display, especially in this month. We have a conservative town, and as a library, do not need to make political statements." See Target and Bud Light as negative examples. "I certainly do not want the library to promote LGBTQ agendas." So... I don't really want to out you, Evie, but I'm going to. So as a member of the queer community, and I'm going to ask this, is it okay if I say queer community, or should I say LGBTQ, or what should I do?
So, I mean, I will tell you, like, and I discuss this with friends, and I train on this as well, like, queer is a reclaimed slur for the community, right? So a lot of us have used it sort of as a reclamation of something that was used against us, and so you'll find that a lot of elders don't use it as often, or maybe don't prefer it being used to describe them. But I will say that, like, working with my kids and, like, Gen Z in general, they're more open to using that word kind of freely. I know you, and I know everybody on this podcast, and I'm okay personally with you using it in this context, but I'm also not a representative of the entire queer community, so just know that, you know, if there's pushback, there's a reason for that, and that's kind of how I would answer that question, I guess.
Well, and it's the worst reason to do anything, because if I see LGBTQ, I'm going to keep stumbling over my tongue the whole time.
Right.
And
for ease of conversation,
I'll be using Q. So anyway, they were concerned that the library was going to be promoting an LGBTQ agenda. Wheeler removed the display, thinking its removal would just be temporary until the board advised her on how to change it. Instead, 2 weeks later, the board decided that it had lost confidence in Wheeler and Lancaster and voted to fire them. Now, Wheeler and Lancaster, who are both neurodivergent, and two other library patrons are suing the Sterling Free Public Library and its city for violating their constitutional rights to free speech, due process, and equal protection, and for violating the Kansas Open Records Act, a law that allows the public to view and copy records maintained by public entities. The lawsuit argues that the city's residents are entitled to a library that embraces a range of viewpoints, not just the viewpoints of those with an aversion to rainbow colors and a disdain for LGBTQ citizens. It also alleges that the board had previously objected to buying a book featuring a non-binary teenage character and to sponsoring a city 4th of July parade because one of the floats advertised a pride event. The lawsuit seeks former employees' lost and future wages. Well, I can say pretty firmly that this is stupid. Yeah. Really, really dumb. Because it wasn't even a thing to do with the queer community or Pride Month. It was a rainbow, and they fired 2 librarians over it.
Right, but even if it had, like, this is a public library. Like, the laws that govern and the rules that govern public libraries are very different than what we're experiencing in school libraries. So I find that really interesting. And the fact that they're suing them at the degree that they're suing them for me is really, really valid and really appropriate. I hope that they get all of the money that they're asking for.
Me too.
Because that's pain and suffering in multiple parts of a bunch of different identities. It's gross. So yeah, I love that for them.
The main reason I chose this article is because I think it's very reflective of the times we're living in, where there's a huge knee-jerk reaction to anything that could be interpreted as someone representing themselves in the classroom, whether it's their pronouns, whether it's having a rainbow sticker on their laptop or a flag in their room, or maybe just being gay. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with all of these. But Bunny, how have you noticed this around you in your area?
Apparently, putting my pronouns in my signature line on my emails was a political statement.
Wow.
And I was told I had to take those off because we're not supposed to be making political statements with our emails.
I want to make sure that everyone listening understands the sheer annoyance of the air quotes that Bunny is doing right now. Like
I am doing the air quotes.
Like the air quotes are so over dramatic, and I need y'all to understand that that's adding to the feeling for me. So,
honestly, as you were reading that, my eyes rolled so far back in my head, like I saw brain matter. The fact that it was a short-term, basically like substitute librarian that bitched about it.
yeah, like the audacity of that, first of all.
Right?
Yeah.
And you didn't understand it. Like, it's colors. It's not like I've got so much rainbowy stuff in my classroom.
Literally originated in the Bible, though. Like, also.
Right.
Yes.
Rainbows were discussed in the actual Bible and were a symbol of, and I'm going to misquote because I am not the Christian at the table, but it was a symbol of God's promise, right? That was the deal, to always protect humankind, et cetera, et cetera. So the fact that that has been bastardized in such a way, and there's these people who are so blind with hatred for the community that they are more interested in like going against the reality of what they are talking about than they are just, not being assholes.
Cal, what about you? What at your school, have you seen anything, or in your area? What's been your reaction to this? I know pronouns have played a game with your life at the moment, but
yeah, we've had some instances of pronouns, but regarding this particular situation, I think it's interesting that it got reported by someone who had absolutely no clue what they were talking about.
That's always
They had no understanding. They had no frame of reference.
And the thing they were complaining about didn't exist.
Right, yeah, you made an assumption of something that doesn't exist.
But I'm mad about this thing.
But I'm going to raise all kinds of hell about it. And then when you find, was there an apology issued? Was there you know what? Let me do some training on bettering myself to make sure that this doesn't happen again. No, it was I don't know. They probably feel like it was an honest mistake, and that's crap. So, how do I feel about the situation? I'm a little annoyed, but I'm just gonna go harder for any of my students that identify on the LGBTQ spectrum because they deserve it.
That's exactly right. And Evie, what about you? Have you experienced this as a librarian in Texas?
A queer librarian in Texas.
A queer librarian in Texas.
Yeah, well, of course. So I've experienced this at all levels. I sponsor my school's GSA, which I've done for, I guess, 6 years now.
And what is the GSA?
It used to be, we had an argument about this earlier, apparently. So the National GSA has decided that it can be either the Gay Straight Alliance, which it's been for us in the past, or the Genders and Sexualities Alliance. And either way, it's very, important for our kids to have that community. So I've experienced from the kid level, which has been not always pretty. But I also, because I'm very open and very out, and I also train at my district level, I train teachers on supporting queer kids in classrooms. I have been targeted because we, just like every other school district in Texas, has been targeted by these conservative PACs that are attempting to elect school board members that are moving toward this idea of parental rights, which we'll talk about.
Yeah, we'll get in that
later. I'm not going to go there, but I've seen it from that perspective. It's affected me as a librarian because of the whole conversation about gender identity books and things like that. So we are lucky. My district, I actually was super lucky. We have an opt-out program whereas certain districts have just eliminated the books altogether.
wow.
So we got really lucky. I am very proud to say that my district has done the best they can in the face of what they're facing to keep our kids at least being able to access the things that we want them to access for their, identity and their, validation and all those things. So, but yeah, it affects me, I would say, every single day of my life.
I honestly kind of felt, and it was a reach, that we had put a lot of these things to bed when we finally legalized gay marriage as just being marriage. It's like, okay, that was 2014, 2013. Mm-hmm. We can move forward now. And but I guess that's the same as we say, well, we elected Obama. I guess racism's over, guys. So
no
we did it. So I'm just kind of baffled at first, like, oh, we're attacking trans people. And now it's everything. They went like, oh, no, we're only picking on this. And I want to get into that in a minute. But the thing is, right now across the country, we have a lot of schools that are making laws. We have states that are making laws that are really they're promoting hate. And they're trying to eliminate something that they want to cause hate because people either don't understand or don't know or aren't aware. And it's easy to say, oh, we're protecting the children because if there is someone of the opposite gender or someone who is trans in the same bathroom, something bad is going to happen. Do you want someone in the bathroom with your child who is not the same gender? And the thing is, and I think everyone listening, if you take a moment to pause and have common sense, when you're in the bathroom, you really don't want to deal with other people. Most people want to get in and out and be left alone and do whatever and move on with their life. Ms. Bunny?
If you know the genitalia of the person in the stall next to you, you are the creeper, not them.
Mm. Exactly. 1,000%. And it started with that in the Carolinas like 5 years ago. They had all these bathroom bills, and then it was kind of like, okay, that was done. We've moved on. Right now, we're having all these attacks, and it's moved to the school level, and it's moved to the governmental level. It went from before where they were trying to pass, and they said, you know what? We can't attack these people out in the public because... you know what? We have laws against that. So let's try to make life as hard as they can at a government level or at a student level. And the thing is, I don't even really feel a lot of these people who are passing these laws have hate. I think they've just fallen for kind of a straw man argument. And it's, for those who don't know, straw man's where you invent something, say it's a problem, to distract everyone from what else is going on. Or just pretty much just to distract. And so they build a fake thing out of straw and say, oh, but look at that over there. It's coming to steal. It's going to change your kids. They're trying to touch your kids. No, they're not. No one is. It's a bullshit argument they're using to distract from what they're doing and to defund schools. Because right now there's a big, very open push to privatize education and to make it so that you have to go to a private school that will take care of your needs, but as we know, not all schools are created equal, especially if they're privately funded. And there's going to be some really high-quality ones, there's going to be some shit ones, and the other part of that is when they're in those schools, they can teach kids whatever they want. They don't have to stick to any specific curriculum, and there's things that can be taught and things they can try to make illegal to be taught, like in the state of Florida where they're trying to make certain concepts. They're saying things are CRT, and it's just... it's bullshit. It's complete bullshit right now, and it's affecting all of our kids.
I'm going to disagree with you a little bit, and I will go ahead and out myself again as saying that I am definitely the most militant of the group.
Yes.
Which is why I'm only allowed on here like once a year. But I would say I would disagree with you. I do think that the people making these laws are evil. I do think that the people making these laws have hate in their hearts. What I do believe, though, also is that they are selling a straw man argument to their constituents who are not necessarily bad people.
I agree with you there.
Yeah. So, I want to make that distinction, and I had this conversation with the count, is that if you are voting a certain direction and you're saying I'm not a bad person, and you say, oh, I don't care who you voted for or whatever, I do care who you voted for. Because if you're voting for these people who are stripping away the rights of children and their families and people who are just trying to live their lives and do the best that they can to get through this hellscape that we have created in our image on this planet, I'm sorry, but you're not a good person. And I do care that you voted for that person. So, I get a little bit, I get in my feelings about it a little.
No, I think that's perfectly valid.
Because they can eat my ass.
I feel that it's a really, I don't want to say easy argument to make, but the reason I think they're doing it is to generalize a base. Say, if you vote for me, I'm going to go against these things that are so horrible. And people who aren't familiar with the LGBT community or might not be aware that the people around them are LGBT or are trans or anything, they don't understand. And so if they're told, like, oh, no, they're trying to get into the schools, they're pushing an agenda, these books have an agenda, we need them out. There was a book that talked about sex. Well, yeah, there have been books about sex since the 40s. These are not new things.
I wish that there had been books about my sex when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. I've known I was gay since I was 8. It would be really cool as a queer person. And by the way, I'm not young. Like, I'm in my 40s, listeners. And I need you to know that, like, for a very long time, I have had to figure this out on my own. And so not only do I have this perspective as a teacher and as a queer teacher and as a teacher who teaches queer kids, I have this experience of being a queer child growing up in the 90s and understanding, like, how difficult it is to be a queer child. And then especially now, at least back then we were ignored, right? Like, at least back then no one really paid attention to us, or we got bullied by our peers. Mm-hmm. Now we've got lawmakers bullying us.
Exactly.
To the tune of our livelihoods, to the tune of our health care, right? So I don't know, man. Because
they're going to say, oh, we can't do any kind of health care or anything for the children if it's trans, if they need steroids or hormones, anything that might be gender affirming in one direction or another. Why?
Well,
because they're like, oh, it's surgery. They're cutting off penises and they're turning them into vaginas, and that's not what's happening at all.
And not at all what's happening. And that's the thing that's so gross, is that's what happens when people who make laws about things they don't understand, they create this conjecture that doesn't exist. And so you use the term straw man argument. I think that's a super important thing to understand, because we are quite literally fighting the wicker man. You know, it's like we're Don Quixote's windmill at this point, right? Like, they are fighting something that's not even really there. And so it's very difficult to be on this side of it as a queer person, and also on the teacher side of it, and to understand, like, the laws and the rules and the protocols that get us there. But as a queer person, to be like, but like, why are you doing this? Like, what's the point of this?
They want to hurt, and they want to get as many people supporting them as they can. And since there might be people who don't understand, or especially people of a specific generation that don't understand because they aren't as familiar, that they're easier to say, oh, I guess this is a bad thing. And I guess we do need to remember. But it's sad because it's to the point that if you are supporting students, you're putting up a rainbow, or if you have something, or if you're just saying, hey, I think it's okay you exist, that's a bad thing, and that these two librarians deserve to be fired. Think about that, because you're showing support and saying, I think what you are is okay. I think you as a human is okay. You should be fired because you don't need to support people. That is really, really fucked up.
Yeah.
If your agenda is saying, hey, can I exist? And their answer is fuck you. We did that in the 60s, and everyone was like, oh, yeah, that was bad, but we can't talk about that now because that's critical race theory. And now it's happening again on a rainbow agenda. And they being just pretty much this conservative, super rich crowd who want to keep their politicians in office. It's kind of like the way Donald Trump said, okay, well, use racist terms to say that, these immigrants are coming and they're flooding and they're ruining everything. And yeah, no, because some people get scared and vote for that. And now they're turning it into an anti-gay agenda, an anti-LGBTQ, and trying to hurt people because they don't like the fact that they exist.
It hurt my mom and teacher heart to hear the phrase come out of your mouth of, at least back then they ignored us.
Yeah,
like
that's real.
in a universe where being ignored is preferable. God, that sucks for our kids. Like,
yeah, no, it sucked back then.
That's terrible. Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Like, that's
for sure.
That's our baseline. Like, the bar got dropped into the basement at some point, and then just like. We're against gender. Listen to yourself. Listen to the words. You are against affirming. You're like, do you understand how negative, and you're trying to say, oh well, we're not hateful, but